King Charles says the world needs to better respect and understand the Muslim faith at a time of fractured global relations. Speaking at the Oxford Centre for Islamic Studies, of which he is patron, the King opened with the words, I'll let you say the words, Danica, because I know you were practising.
I think it's Assalamu alaikum.
I think you did very well. It's an Arabic greeting that means peace be upon you.
We gave it a go. Look, I mean, we both know that the monarch is the defender of the Christian faith, James, but this isn't the first time King Charles has done this sort of stuff. Remember when he helped pack dates for Muslims to eat during Ramadan?
You are packing dates faster than I can see them. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, so I never realized this is a speedy couple.
Joining us now from London is Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. Tom, good to see you as always. Thanks for joining us. Look, as the head of the Church of England, what was the King doing here? I mean, is the UK a Christian country or not?
It's a really interesting question because King Charles has always kind of presented himself since he's taken the throne as kind of defender of all of the faiths. Yes, he is Supreme Governor of the Church of England, but he seems to have taken an outsized interest in essentially kind of grandiose interfaith work. On the one hand, you could say, you know, we are a tolerant, multi-faith society. There are many British Muslims who are actually, you know, it's a good place to be a Muslim in the UK because of the fact that they don't face the kind of repression that they might in many Muslim countries across the world. But there is something a bit off, isn't there, about someone who primarily is supposed to be the figurehead of the established church. And I think it says something about the kind of multicultural era that we find ourselves in, that even that kind of figure feels the need to genuflect to diversity in that sense. I mean, I'm a Republican and an atheist, so I'd rather we didn't have a king or an established church. But nevertheless, there's something very much of our time about the way in which Charles has been approaching this issue, I would say.
Yeah, it's a really interesting conflict that we're watching with great interest as we move forward. I want to talk to you about another thing that's happening in the UK right now, and that's the designation of certain protest groups as terror groups. More than 100 people were arrested across the UK over the weekend after staging protests in support of the Palestine Action Group, which was recently prescribed as a terror organisation. Some pro-Palestinian activists chanted, "F your Jewish state." Tom, among those arrested, an 81-year-old, what do authorities do with these people who a few weeks ago were supporting just another protest organisation, but now are supporting a designated terror organisation?
No, it's essentially, I think the authorities have bitten off more than they can chew here. I think two things can be true at the same time, one of which is that Palestine Action is a despicable organisation, as well as breaking into RAF bases and making millions of pounds worth of damage. Some of their supporters have also been smashing up businesses in Jewish areas under the thin pretext that they had some sort of connection to the Israeli defence industry. And from some of the things you heard chanted, some of those demonstrations, F your Jewish state, there were some arrests for racially aggravated speech. I think we've seen who these people really are, but I think by prescribing them, rather than just kind of punishing individual members for the crimes that they've committed, by putting them on a list alongside, you know, Hamas and Islamic State, I think it's done two things. One of which it has ended up kind of just criminalising speech. People are being arrested for just holding up placards saying, I support Palestine Action, I oppose genocide. And also it's led to a situation where these people are being able to kind of pose as martyrs. These sort of middle-class Israelophobes get to pretend they're Nelson Mandela. And that's been a kind of mantle that's been handed to them by this quite heavy-handed action. So I think we can do two things at the same time: condemn these people, arrest them when they commit crimes. But this prescription, I think it's just going to lead to a huge headache for the police and a huge problem where freedom of speech is concerned.
Yeah, that's an interesting take on it. I was seeing these protests week in, week out at the moment. Now, look, this was just baffling to me, Tom. Children will be taught that worrying and feeling down are not mental health conditions because of a number of young kids being signed off as sick. Now, teachers in the UK have been told they must avoid encouraging pupils to self-diagnose normal feelings as problems such as anxiety and depression. You know, Tom, seriously, the next generation are growing up to be a bunch of snowflakes. Worrying comes with life. It's not a bloody mental health condition, for goodness sake. How are they going to handle anything as adults?
No, I completely agree with you, Danica. The problem is this is what they've been taught for so long. The fact that this guidance is having to be issued, it's recognising that for many years in schools, also just in our kind of civil society more broadly, children have been encouraged to think of themselves as mentally ill, to always be on the lookout for signs of mental ill health. And can we really be surprised then that we've got this cohort of young people coming through? There's record high numbers of kids over the age of 16 not in any form of education or employment. There's also been this huge rise in young people who are on disability benefits, and the lion's share of that growth is coming from people signed off for anxiety, depression, terms which have become really quite nebulous and detached from any real kind of clinical definition of mental illness. And I think it's particularly galling that Labour are now having to make these points, because even about a year ago, they were chastising, or a year and a half ago, they were chastising the Tory government for daring to say that maybe some of this rise in mental ill health amongst young people is because we've just encouraged them to be a bit soft. Back then they were saying, how dare you, etc., etc. Now they're having to eat their words. So I don't know what good a new set of guidance will do. I think the genie's kind of already out of the bottle, but we need a real cultural shift back towards resilience, back towards just sucking it up in life, because this younger generation haven't heard that message for a very long time.
I want to give you an example as to why you have to think twice about what you see on the internet these days. Let me introduce you to Mia Zulu. She's an influencer whose social media posts recently went viral after she turned up at Wimbledon, sat in the front row on centre court, was seen with the rich and famous. But Tom, here's the thing. She was never at the tennis tournament because she doesn't actually exist. She's an AI creation. So I'm curious how her 160,000 followers on social media reacted to news that this woman, they're following her every move, she doesn't actually exist. And now they know that. Do they even care?
I know, it's an incredible story, isn't it? I mean, this AI was apparently so convincing that not only did it go viral with all of these posts, but, you even had the kind of typical kind of creepy lads in the replies asking her out. So this is a kind of telling example of how far this technology has gone so quickly. I'm sure you both have noticed just how sophisticated it's got in quite a short period of time. The days of every AI image having far too many fingers and looking obviously very hokey are sort of over. I mean, we've talked a lot about what jobs are AI going to replace, going to render obsolete. I'm not sure any of us thought influencers were on that list, but to be perfectly honest, maybe that's one profession we can do with that.
Oh, actually, you know what? That's a very good point. It's spot on. Exactly. Tom Slater, always good to talk to you. Thanks very much for joining us on the show this evening.